So, Allison, do you know if Kellen will be joining us?
No, not this evening.
Okay,
No.
got it. Okay, so it is 6:32. I'll call a meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the April 20th, 2026 meeting. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Kathy, seconded by Jeff. Does anybody have any feedback on the minutes from the last meeting?
Sorry, I gotta close my door. My dogs are yapping.
Here we go.
As long as I did, this is me. As long as I got the audio on.
You'll get that echo, yeah. There we go.
No, I think it's still there.
No,
Yeah.
it's in there. Hold on.
I think you could drop your
Yeah.
audio connection. Any other edits to the minutes from the 4:20 meeting? All in favor of approving the minutes as written?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. So Allison, did you figure there is a little?
Yeah, I have the no audio. Yep, it's
Okay,
just
yeah.
that I have so many Zoom meetings that it always goes back again. So
Yeah, no, I hear
let's
you.
see, but
I think you're good now.
looks like it, right?
Yeah.
No
I'm
background.
not even
Okay.
gonna double.
Mhm.
So do you log in just so you can record it?
So that I can share the PowerPoint and
Of
those at
course,
home
because
can
if you have a
see.
PowerPoint, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, next item on the agenda is citizens' comments. Does anybody in the room have a comment they would like to make as a citizen? It's not related to items on tonight's agenda. Okay, hearing none, move on. Third item on the agenda is to continue our working session from the last meeting, which was to continue the SWOT analysis. As you might all recall, last time we got through the strengths, which was great. We're going to move on to the rest of the analysis, I hope, led by Allison.
Yes.
So I will turn.
Sent a
It'll
share
to
request.
you.
Do
Oh.
you know who that?
I think that will be, that went to Sue.
I got it and granted it.
All right,
Mhm.
then we're
Thank you, Sue.
good. Thanks.
You're welcome.
There we go. So, yep, just a quick recap. Last time we went over the strengths. And that is always meant to take a little bit longer. Obviously, you want to pull out the best parts of the town. So that's why that took a bit longer. The hope is tonight that we'll be able to go through weaknesses, opportunities, and threats through the slideshow.
Could we add one more to strengths? I don't think we covered last time. Is that
Yeah.
possible? I was just gonna say the Chester Journal, the Town Telegraph that we have.
Chester Telegraph. All news and no paper.
Oh, the Telegraph, yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah, no,
So
no,
maybe is it really, how would you describe that that's not tied? Is it basically local journalism or is it specific
Yeah.
Telegraph?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, specifically the Telegraph, because we do have local journalism through the Vermont Journal, but for a town of our size to actually have our own newspaper that allows public opinion and dissent and kudos is pretty cool.
yeah, I would add, Carl, not being a resident of Chester, that not many towns have a resource like the Telegraph. We may disagree sometimes on their editorial philosophy, but the bottom line is that it is a fabulous way to keep up with local news, and a lot of towns would wish they had something like that. And it's not costing the taxpayer anything.
Okay. Yeah.
And will they advertise town events and, okay, more so than, because I want to think of it as an asset as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. They've got like their own calendar of events that's on there, and they
And,
also do the warn notices and such.
Yeah, they're a paper of record or.
and
There, if we were to send them a press release about wanting, some kind of public session, they would
They
do an
would do
article.
that for
Totally,
that sort
yeah.
of what I would.
And they might very well report on it afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Mhm.
We have the print journal, which is a nice resource too, but they are more limited in their editorial, in their just reporting capacity. They're Ludlow based, as I'm sure you know, but they do cover Chester.
The second paper of record, or do you use a larger?
We
source
do
or-
use 2 papers of record
Okay.
because the legislature doesn't recognize virtual papers.
The online
Yeah.
only,
Yeah.
yeah, that's fine.
So
Okay.
I said it's free to the town. We do spend a fair bit for legal notices because we send it to 2 medium,
Yeah.
but,
Any last minute strengths? There will be, I guess it's the last slide, but I don't see why we wouldn't put it in now. The goal is after you've gone through your SWOT, we will take it back to Mark and sort of compile it in a way and set it out so that you can relook at it again.
Okay.
And we'll try and digest some themes that have come out of the SWOT, and there'll be opportunity again if something, light bulb. We'll try and see if there's any themes or any like big important pieces that we might have missed when we went through the exercise.
Right.
Is there a way to just like spend 3 minutes resurfacing everything that was in the strengths? Just read through the list.
I would love to say yes, Kellen took those notes. And we should have gone, if I can get my email, we shared some internal dialogue about the meeting.
Well, I think if we can get some. I'm fine if you can do it quickly, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on it if we need to. go
Yeah,
through the
if I can hit the
Well-
bullet points,
particularly because you're going to come back.
yes, yes.
Okay.
So if there is, majority, should I go through them real quick? We talked about business incubation, small businesses, artisan community, internet connectivity, municipal services, ambulance, fire, police, high quality and local. Regional and major hospitals. Businesses came up again, so we got to sparse some of these out. Public utilities, town management, general character of the town, brand and name recognition, attractive place to live, 4 seasons, Stone Village, schools, K through 12 in the village center, and then high school within walking distance, village center, recreation infrastructure, proximity to ski economy, regional transportation network, and the quarry industry. So when you go through that list, quite a nice array of highlights for Chester.
Yeah, that's a good
thing. Should we add agritourism to it as well?
Up to you all. Do you think there's?
I guess my instinct at the moment is to just say generically doesn't mean anything. Is there a particular agritourism in town that you think is a strength right now? Because then
I just, maybe that's
So I'm
maybe not
thinking-
tourism, but the agricultural,
I
piece
know.
of it seems that.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say, Carl, is that we have a section for opportunities, and that it feels more
Oh,
like,
okay. Yeah,
because the strength is something we already have.
got it.
And we've got that Peter does sleigh rides and some things like that, but they're not big deal
Is
at
that
this
what
point.
comes to mind, right? Or is that
Yeah.
something that we would like to grow so that it really, is it up there with? Stone
We do
Village?
have the horse riding facility with the Savages. We do have a Christmas tree farm. We do have Peter doing horse rides, but none of them are like big strengths right now, I would
And
think.
also, I wouldn't want to leave out the North Street Farmers Market. He grows his vegetables here.
That's true.
Have a lot of people stop there for plants and stuff as well as vegetables.
Is that
And we have several, I mean, we have like what Snowden Farms that does the beef. Betsy Larakis, I might be butchering the last name, has, I buy meat from her. Like there's a lot of places. We've got like an organic farm subscription. It's maybe it's an opportunity, but I feel like there's a lot of folks that are kind of doing some of that work that, I mean, it's awesome. Coming from a place that didn't have that is really cool. And the honey, I mean, come on, how many people have honey? you can get?
So the North Street, is that like a farmer's market or?
Yeah, he,
The one, just the little market on North Street. Okay, yeah,
yeah,
I know what you're talking about now. Okay. Yes.
he grows all his vegetables right across.
Yeah, no, I think that I tend to think of them as like just one of the many shops in town, but you're right. He does grow what he sells. Yeah.
Except for the flowers. I mean,
Right.
he brings in the flowers for Mother's Day and all
So
that.
that is a pretty useful resource. Now,
Where is that? I don't think I know.
right when you go out of the Stone Village, on the right-hand side, there's
Oh, Squatties.
yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it's easy to just sell one more shop, but it is an well, no, it's not tourism, but it's an agricultural business. What about Greg Gomo's
Yeah, that's the snow
Yeah,
plow.
snow-
that snow top?
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, I don't go up there personally, but I have heard of it. Okay.
All right, well, we'll flag that to sort of
Yeah.
come back to a discussion. Is that a strength or is it an opportunity? Try and get them in the right bucket.
It may be a strength in that we may have enough to say that, but I guess I would, anyway, I have to think about wording it in a way that to say that,
I like the framework. Like if we can't say definitively if it's a strength, but we like it, we just slot it right in the opportunity bucket.
yeah. And the opportunity would mean we'd like to expand it.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So Allison, one thing just to mention, from sort of a timing point of view, because I may have committed Mark to a little bit of work,
Okay.
but it's not firm. So let me tell you what it is first.
Okay.
We will have sort of a cross commission workshop on June 9th.
I think it's 6th, but,
It's Tuesday. the
oh,
9th,
okay.
Where,
It's in the evening.
yes, in the evening, where we're hoping to be able.
June 9th, not
June
upcoming.
9th, no,
Okay.
June 9th.
Yeah, we're on the 4th, so that wouldn't.
Where we're just hoping to be able to share with that, and it's basically, it'll sort of probably be hosted by the select board, but it will include the planning commission, all the different commissions that report to the select board.
Housing, economic
Yeah,
development, all
and
those folks.
TRB.
Okay, TRB.
Right, and the goal of the meeting at the highest level is, hey, we're getting ready to rewrite or update the town plan. We want to make sure that all of the different constituents and commissions are aware and thinking about it and, kind of level setting and being on the same page and sharing ideas. And one of the things we thought we might do in that meeting is share the results of the SWOT analysis, just to generate some cross-commission feedback and get feedback from the select board. So,
One question.
Yes.
Before, this will be a public meeting, right?
It
So we
will.
could maybe also use it as one of the required workshops from the municipal planning grant, do you think?
we could. The only thing that we're sort of leaning towards is basically the priority will be to make sure that the different members of the different commissions and the select board get to have their say and collaborate and share their ideas. And if there's room as part of that or at the end of that to gather feedback from the community, we
So
will.
run much more like a meeting as
Yeah.
opposed to a sort of
Yeah.
facilitated open. Okay.
Yeah, so we haven't ruled
That's
out
good to-
using it to gather feedback from the community, but that's not the primary focus for
Yeah,
that meeting.
okay. The boards sort of that level setting is the
Yeah.
primary focus. Okay. That will, so I will still be out on leave
Yeah.
that date. So that will be Kellen, probably assisted, I'm guessing, with Jason, unless
Yeah.
there was some strong maybe hand-holding by
And-
yourself and Preston. But
We may be able to do that one on our own.
Yeah, in other words, I'm not anticipating that I'll need Mark to help facilitate the discussion, but I would like the SWOT.
make sure the materials are
Materials,
finished by
I
then.
think-
Yeah,
yes.
which I think we can promise.
Yeah, yes,
Okay, so
okay.
probably not a,
Right.
okay, so I'm
Right,
thinking,
no com-
okay, maybe
no
not Jason,
commitment
but
for you
Kellen
guys
would
to
probably come
facilitate.
in. Okay.
Welcome to
half the
have,
materials.
yes,
Okay.
yep, so,
Yeah, so that's, yeah, that goes along with what we were hoping to do at the end of this meeting, combine everything, put some themes together, put it in a way that was
perfect.
digestible.
Yep. Okay,
So
great.
doable. Yeah.
And then we're thinking that after the appointed boards have had a chance to look at it, then we do another rollout to the public.
Yeah, okay. That would be
And
great.
possibly even a ranking exercise or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, I was thinking, or one of the, it would be nice to put it somewhere in a location that gets a lot of foot traffic, just sort of,
Yeah.
if there's some way to get consensus, large
Yeah.
poster board or something where it's,
Yep.
just a free for all, people coming in and
Yeah.
going for a set amount of time and
Mhm.
you can capture
Yeah,
free comments that way.
we might be able to do something like that.
Yeah.
If it was in a way, like, if you imagine just putting it in the clerk's office with a way for
Yeah,
people
just
to stumble in and look at it and.
Well,
do
there's
something.
that and a little bit of empty space in the front of Smitty's, put a couple boards there or
Yeah.
something. I mean, it would mean,
A little bit of,
A
it's
little bit of work,
Yeah.
and maybe a little
um,
bit of expense, but I mean, we could
yeah,
certainly do
some
it.
Post-it notes, couple markers,
Yeah.
stickies.
Yeah.
But I think when it's somewhere where people feel like they have the freedom and they're
Yeah,
not being
that's
watched,
structured
that you
into it.
might, you
Yeah,
might get
okay.
a couple comments
Yeah.
that, you might not
Alright.
have gotten otherwise,
Okay.
so.
And we did have that housing open house where people went upstairs, but there was no set time. They could come between 1 and 4 or something like that. And a lot of people did come. And we
That
were,
might also work, because if it's just upstairs, people can kind of go up and do what they want. Nobody's looking at
You
them.
don't think anyone's sitting
Yeah.
there, oh, Patty said this.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
okay.
we have certainly learned that if you spring something on the select board without a lot of public input, it stalls.
starts to-
And so we don't want that to
Let's
happen.
keep it very
Yeah.
focused. And
We want to make sure that nobody can say they didn't know about it. And the other thing about the ranking is that at least it isn't just 5 people saying this is what we think is important. They
yeah.
say, no, the public had a chance and this is how they ranked it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's important.
So, okay.
Okay, so that's all. I didn't mean to.
Okay,
Yeah.
no, that's it goes along with sort of, and
Yeah.
it matches with sort of what we were intending
Okay.
for the outcome to be. So
Right.
there's multiple uses, so it's even better. That's great. I will pass the date along. And- Okay, weaknesses, let's move to these. So looking, again, these are the internal struggles. And there's some prompting questions there to get, and also some examples. Where does the town struggle today, especially in ways the town plan might address? Is this something Chester is, which is a weakness, or something Chester is subject to, which is the threat, which we'll get to later? Are there issues, a good way to think about it is, are there issues that, repeatedly come up that have yet to be solved? I would say, an example, aging population. So housing for those folks. Has this been a repeated issue that they're moving or that there is not appropriate housing for? Are there other pieces? It was a strength, the utility infrastructure, but I've also heard you say the limits and the capacity could potentially be a weakness.
Right, and reading through the minutes here, it kind of made it sound like I was totally against business coming in, but not.
No.
But it's limited to the businesses that aren't gonna use too much of the utilities, Like, we couldn't take another food manufacturing company at this time, because still in the middle of developing a new well site and pump stations in an upgrade to the wastewater plant. Well, we're in the process, but it's, we got a few
Not there
years
yet.
before we can get there, so.
I mean, I think it's important that you said something though, because that's a recognizing what your constraints are will drive strategy, right? Like if you look at it and you're like, oh, this is going to cost, $20 million to bring in a business that's going to generate $100,000 in additional revenue, that's not a good ROI, right? And so if it helps to define what types of businesses and what resources do they require, and match them against what our capacities are.
Yeah,
Like a
Yeah,
business
well,
that just needed a railroad, I mean, that would actually be a really good thing because we have a capacity for a railroad and it's not going to be highly water intensive or sewage intensive.
yeah, I guess the only thing I'll say sort of in response to that, that's maybe um, contrary to both Jeff and you, Carl, in terms of this, is that sometimes from a strategy and in a visioning point of view, you don't want to limit yourself to your existing capabilities and the constraints of your current day world. You would like to envision what would Chester want to look like if there were no constraints, understanding that those constraints will likely drive the pace at which you achieve your end state, but it doesn't
Hmm.
fundamentally change the end state that you're shooting for. However, if you say, this is what I have, and therefore my end state must look like this, I feel like that's self-limiting.
Well, the way I look at it is know what I have. And I know how long it takes to increase. I've been trying a long time to get a lot of this stuff increased, and it's been a lot longer than it should have taken, so.
Yeah.
but you feel like we're making
Oh,
real
yes,
progress now.
we definitely are now, yes. But it's only taken me about 8 to 10 years to
Yeah.
get stuff moving, And, it's just, it's not the people here, it's getting the money, and Julie's done a heck of a job bringing in grant money and stuff. That's helped us immensely. But, I deal with the different state agencies that aren't always that cooperative, and they don't always see your vision or whatever, what your needs. So, sometimes that can be frustrating.
So I did some thinking about this and I don't want to dominate, but one thing that I would call a weakness is the town lacks a marketing program or a marketing budget. Um, Town also lacks a plan for economic development, although we do have an economic development commission that may very well come up with that. The marketing part, well, anyway, the EDC may talk about that too, but right now, clearly we don't. I wrote down complacency. And what I meant by that is some people say, oh, tell them the way it is. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's always NIMBYism, meaning kind of,
Not in my backyard. Yeah.
I don't really want things to change, and certainly not near me. And then the other thing, which maybe will just settle in the town plan, and doesn't have to be listed here, but it's a lack of consensus on what we want to do to go forward. I mean, we had at the last meeting kind of the creative economy is the great thing, and select board's kind of reaction is, no, we need real jobs here, not just the creative economy. So yeah, need both.
Yeah.
I have a few other things for threats, but we won't get to that yet.
Let's see, internal challenges. Do you think that, not sure if this is a weakness or not, but I'll describe something that is, and maybe a lot of towns in Vermont have this. There's this constant tension between what folks in the village want and what folks in the rural areas want. So, and I don't know whether that's a weakness or that's just a reality of,
Well, it's
rural
certainly,
Vermont.
yeah, it's also a weakness if you can't have a united front
Right.
about, yes, it does, people in the suburbs do, excuse me, subsidize to some extent the water and sewer system in town, but then we have restaurants and we have other conveniences that we wouldn't have without the water and sewer.
Yeah.
And you could make the argument that the amount spent to pave the roads to rural is disproportionately higher for per
Yeah.
unit capital. That you can slice it a bunch of different ways. I mean, there's
Drive a couple miles to plow somebody out, and there's only 2 people out there. That's a lot of time and money.
Well, how about this? Is the size of the town a weakness? The geographic,
Actual footprint,
the
square
actual
footage.
footprint of the town? Would anybody say that's a weakness? People say, well, we got all these dirt roads, we got more dirt roads than any town in, Vermont or whatever.
I don't know if you knew this. There's certain ways of counting it, but certainly Chester is within the top 3 towns in the state with a number of dirt roads.
Really?
Yeah.
See, that's what I was gonna say, like the thought you want to be able to, what is limiting Chester? So what can be done
So
by
there's
it? The size wise, you may not be
Can't
able
really
to
do
do
anything about
anything
that.
about,
Yeah,
but the cost of maintaining that high number of dirt roads.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we can
Yeah.
change it, but the number
But
of
it's
bridges,
certainly,
culverts and gravel is just a lot. And we have a good road crew, but it costs money.
Yeah, high cost of maintenance
Yeah.
is a
I
weakness.
think it's like we have 100 miles of dirt roads or something like that.
Something like that.
Wow. Didn't know that. Somebody in
Um,
my office did, but I didn't know.
Yeah, it wouldn't be
Um,
there's a little bit of different ways of how you count roads, but yeah, it's right up there. Some people say the highest number in the state, some people say second or third highest.
Right.
That's right up there.
And they are well maintained.
Yeah, no, I think they are. I think, Hugh, that there is the potential for some discord for rural people. Why should we pray for improvements in the village center? But I don't know.
Okay, so it's not,
I don't think it's big yet. If
Okay.
we were, I mentioned earlier, one of our weaknesses is a marketing strategy, and say if we were to say, gee, we want to hire a marketing person to sell Chester, it could be that some of the rural folks would say, well, why would I pay for that? That's for the merchants in town. That's not my problem. Yeah.
okay, so then that's not, like I
Well,
said.
I'm not sure if it's a big
throwing things
problem
out there
yet.
to See if they stick.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I guess the other thing I think about that I've heard talked about is, I don't know if it's a weakness, but we have some, I don't know if this is higher than other towns, but we've got buildings and properties that are just sort of either abandoned or in disrepair where owners don't want to do anything. And that, like, you look at the store across the street, you look at the old map house, you look at, I'm not trying to beat Steve Mancuso's drum, I'm just telling you, and you've mentioned this, there are certain properties that
They're falling further into disrepair,
falling into
right?
Mhm.
where the property owners don't necessarily want to sell them.
They don't want to do anything.
So it,
The Army
Yeah,
Reserves.
I mean,
yeah, the reserve, the, whatever that building is out on
Oh,
Route
yep.
11.
Steve Mancuso has brought up a list of buildings that are in disrepair and said town should do something. And for a lot of them, the owners, for various reasons,
Have any-
they don't want to talk to us. Yeah, we're not really quite sure why.
I don't think it's that they don't want to,
Yeah.
do things to them. The cost of things is so outrageous now. I can personally speak to that. I mean, I don't want my barn to fall in, but I can't afford to fix it.
Yeah, right.
But, and.
Yeah.
So that's where, right now, but I mean, a lot of these people, they own these buildings, they love the buildings, but
Yeah.
they don't have the extra cash to fix them. And the town's certainly not in a position to.
Yeah.
Give them money to fix them.
So does that become a
Is
threat?
is the town, I mean, with grants and such,
So I think you've got it in the right bucket. I
It's a
think it is a
weakness,
weakness.
yeah.
Yep, it's limiting the town. There's also limited things that can be done for
Right.
those properties. But certainly potentially some things could, if some of them are historic or they're grants. Is there a town beautification? Like there could be.
There are
certain
certain
things.
properties where you kind of wonder why the landowner wouldn't be willing to just sell
Right,
them.
it's-
I get it in Jeff's case, you're not gonna sell your barn, that doesn't work that way.
Right, it's an accessory store.
And another one I know we're in a public session, but Steve Mancuso talks about the Jeffries barn, which is owned by the town. People have looked at what it would cost to restore it and they've just said, it's just too much.
Exorbitant.
Yeah.
So,
So,
and we have other things that, like the dam is another issue.
yeah,
It needs to be repaired. We're being told it has to be repaired, but its starting figures are between 400, 750,000 to do whatever we're gonna do to it.
Yeah.
So there's money we can't spend on the Jeffrey Barn either, so.
Yeah.
I mean, the Jeffrey Barn's a very, historic building, and I'm into all these old buildings and how they're built.
Could is there an opportunity to like partner with like the high school or a trade program, and then you essentially get labor from those folks and we provide the materials, like cooperative grants where it's like, oh, this is your project and you'll have a portfolio at the end of it and you get to restore this, structure.
Trouble is because of budget constraints, how many of the trade programs have gone by the wayside in high schools? I remember what it was like when I was there, but they don't have anywhere near those type of trade programs that they used to have, and it's all because money. It's all been cut out, so.
Yeah, I mean, a good example of that, although I can't remember the actual name of the location of the property, but Carl, this kind of speaks to what you're talking about, and I don't know if it exists anymore today, but I talked to a property owner whose house was built in the 70s, I think, and it was built by the high school kids. The high school had
Yeah.
Yeah.
a program
Yeah,
for kids that wanted to learn how to become builders, and so this property owner basically got the labor from the high school kids to build the
Yeah.
house. They had to buy the materials and whatnot, but the labor was there. So this guy's house was built by,
By high school
Building
students.
trades, the building trades class.
yeah, so anyway. Can you have a strength and a weakness that's the same?
Let's talk
Could
through
be-
it. Let's see what.
I would put the schools in the weakness category.
Okay.
Because, and maybe this is wrong, but I'm just sharing, what people say is the building's a wreck and needs a ton of money to make it
Is this elementary or?
Green Mountain.
Green Mountain.
And, also at Green Mountain, I can't speak to the elementary school, but also at Green Mountain, test scores are nosediving. So the building's a mess and test scores aren't getting any better. So that doesn't sound like a strength to me.
Mhm. Yeah, that could be, it could also, even if it were true or not, the perception, if that is the perception, that is a limiting factor for Chester and would certainly be in the weakness column. It could also even be in the opportunity column then. So you have these local schools.
Right, so
and
maybe it goes
They are an
there too or
opportunity
something,
to
yeah.
strengthen,
Yeah,
them.
well, it's clearly a strength that Chester has a high school.
Yeah.
Oh,
It, to the extent that that high school is not thriving, I don't know if I want to call it a weakness or
An
or
opportunity.
more of an opportunity.
Yeah, I'm
saying-
fine with,
I don't
Saying
know that I would.
that we need
Yeah.
to, there's much we could do to make it.
yeah, maybe that's
Better,
where.
make it
maybe
thrive.
that's-
Yeah.
that's
And
a
I
more
think
optimistic way
that's
to
why
think
this
about it.
brainstorming is, maybe we didn't get them in the right
Right.
buckets in the first place, and maybe it's not the best to put them out in the buckets that they are, but can we spin it in a positive way so
Right.
that ends up as an opportunity as opposed to a
And if we really wanted to have weakness, we could say our weakness is that we might lose our high school.
Mhm.
But
yeah, with consolidation or any
Right.
of the other Act
well,
73.
certainly, I know the legislature is a bit stymied, but I would, I think it's fairly a lot of betting that if they did consolidate, Chester might be a loser.
Oh, and no, I mean, everyone who lives in Chester would be a loser. I mean, it's just a lift and shift of cost onto the families driving the kids to school, the money that they have to dump into the schools they consolidate into, longer bus routes. I mean, there's not a lot of evidence that supports that what they're trying to do with that is actually going to accomplish what they want, but after you ring the bell, you can't unring it. I mean, and you guys have, I'm a big fan of renewables, and I think one of the coolest things about Vermont is that you have an opportunity to partner with your school districts in solar. You've got a ton of roof space and real estate at every school district, and you look at where energy demand is going with data centers and AI, you look at our relative weakness and how we get 25 to 30% of our power from countries that, for whatever reason, we're in active trade wars with. Building out energy resiliency in Vermont would be good. Partnering with school districts to maintain that capacity would turn a cost center into something that isn't a cost center. I mean, we've got some interesting levers to pull to turn, or opportunities to explore if people would be willing to evaluate it.
Yes, Carl wrote an editorial in the Telegraph arguing for keeping the school. And, one point that he made, which I do agree with, is that the assumption is always that you're going to save money by consolidating, and yet the
Rarely
times they've
shown.
consolidated in the past, that hasn't happened.
I mean, go talk to Maine. They tried that. It
Yeah.
doesn't work.
Not to mention you're left with the infrastructure then,
Right.
that's just all
Mhm.
abandoned schools. And
Yeah.
it's, it's a detriment to the towns and the regions that lose their.
Well, it undermines what we're trying to do is to have healthy. I mean, like when you look at, we want to build more houses to add more fluidity in the market so people can move in the right homes for them, which then attracts younger families to move here. Your schools are a big asset for trying to attract younger people with kids to move who clearly can move because they're debating about it. So, yeah, it's a really bad way of trying to solve a problem.
Okay. Well, I don't think I want to deep dive on that one right now. I've got some points of view about, the future of what schools look like in Vermont, and maybe consolidation isn't the answer, but whatever our current trajectory is, it's not one of success. So something needs to change. Not sure what it is, but whatever our current trajectory is, it's unsustainable. So anyway, moving on. Other weaknesses.
How about personnel? I know municipal services, fire, EMS, highway, all of those were a strength. Have there been any issues with keeping? I mean, just hearing things from other towns. There's just a rotating police force, and has that been an
That's the
issue?
norm, yeah, in my departments, just only in the highway as well, it's been a lot of rotating personnel because, I don't know, it's a lot of the people aren't willing to commit like they used to, they know, don't want to be tied down to a job where if it starts snowing, they get a phone call and they gotta go to work. Or the water and wastewater, you have to be there every single day, when it's a holiday or whatever.
Yeah.
They don't wanna do that. They want their 5 days a week or whatever. And they want their weekends to themselves and stuff. They're not, people aren't willing to commit the way. I mean, most of the people that work here have lived here and it's part of their community, so that's why they stick it out, but the ones that aren't from here, you don't see them staying, they don't stay very long.
One thing that, I'll just say it, we said before that we think we have a pretty well-run town. We think we have a pretty good staff, but all of us are old and all of us are talking about retiring and all of us are sharing our medical issues. And, so you just sort of, and there is that feeling that Jeff brought up is that young people just don't aspire to do the kind of stuff we're doing. It's not what it feels like. And so, yeah, you wonder if there is a threat in the future.
Succession plan.
Yeah, succession. There that's a good word for it. I think it's a genuine worry that we do kind of say, geez, who's going to take over when I leave? Yeah, I know.
Same for volunteer boards?
Yeah, I would
Maybe even more so.
Maybe even more so that I've worked from other towns, and so I'd say it's not unusual, but most of your volunteer boards, they tend to be heavily male and they tend to be retired. And finding young people who want to serve on a board is pretty hard. And maybe that's the way it's always been. I don't know, but it is a concern. And there's a few people I can think of, like on our DRB, that we just say, please stay, because there's no one else who wants to do it, and they do, but it can't last forever.
Forever.
Rather, the problem is that you get on a board and you make an effort trying to be committed, trying to help the community. And there's always somebody out there that doesn't agree with you.
Yeah.
And then they see you on the street and why are you doing this? Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Well, and my comment is, well, if you want to change it, maybe you should try to get on the board.
Good comment back.
They don't want to be committed.
Yeah, it's a commitment. It's exactly that.
I can think of a couple of other things. I'm not sure if they'll fit really, but there used to be more medical services in Chester and they're now gone.
Used
All
to
we
be
have
a
is
physician
there even a
and
dentist
central-
yet? Or
yeah,
there's a
and
dentist.
Visiting nurses.
Yeah, so I think there's been sort of a,
And then Sue LeMay was on the corner of School and Maine for a little while. She had an office.
what was she, a doctor or something?
Yeah, she's a physician.
Okay, so there aren't any,
Lack of primary care.
lack of primary care type
Okay.
things.
Well, I think we
We
touched.
did pharmacy,
touched-
right? And
yeah,
that-
Pharmacy
okay.
last
That's what we
time.
talked about. Yeah,
I
like
think that's a big hole.
a local pharmacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll also say this one might be a little bit controversial.
Mm.
There's not enough white collar jobs in Chester.
Yeah. The
There's no way
diversity of jobs.
People
Yeah.
can't make money in this town. So why don't we have more white collar jobs where they can pay enough money so that people can buy a house?
I will say this. I feel like if Chester just put some ads down in Austin and Atlanta in August and asked them, are you able to work remote? Do you not want an environment that's actively trying to kill you with 110-degree weather and 30% humidity? You would get an influx of people like me just rolling around here because it's.
Well, that's what comes out into a marketing plan. But yeah, I hear what you're saying is that for those that can work remotely, I
love it here. It's
mean, I was
amazing.
going to say that I live in Woodstock. I know several people that moved to Woodstock from Texas, and they just say the heat is just awful. They say it's just they say you have cabin fever in the winter. We have cabin fever in the summer. We just can't go outside. Yeah.
So Carl, I'm glad you mentioned that because I wanted to dialogue about that a little bit. we talked about, you know, if you rely on a company and then the company leaves, then, you know, that's not a good thing for a town. But I've seen plenty of cases where people thought they had a remote job and then the company calls them back to the office and they gotta go. So you can't deny that that's a potential reality for anybody that might come to Chester happily to be a remote worker, only to find out a year later, they need to be in the office 3 days a week.
No, that's 100% correct. I know that my company, they have an RTO policy as well. Some of us have been, you know, we were grandfathered in as virtual. There are also some roles that lend themselves more to being virtual, like sales-based, client-facing roles. Um, you know, BDL, I'm flying out on Monday, right? Like I'm, you know, leaving way before dawn, doing a one night trip, being gone, you know, and it's a hike, but my gosh, you know, when I think about my commute and still being able to be anywhere in the States, you know, within a few hours, it's pretty cool.
Yep.
So what does RTO stand for?
Return to office.
Learn to
Oh,
office.
yeah, all right, okay.
That's what Phil Scott wants.
Well,
Everybody's doing it now.
it varies by business. I mean, I do think for a lot of state workers, the remote experiment hasn't worked that well.
Right. And I think, I don't know what Phil Scott's thinking, but like I said, dealing with different state agencies,
Yeah.
they need to have a little more interaction amongst themselves to make things work a little better.
Right.
Because they sit in their little, you know, at their desk at home, and are they talking to these other people that actually affect their job or whatever? No, I think they need to see them once in a while.
Well, and it's been talked about in all kinds of businesses, but I think it happens at the state that if you have, I know we're on camera, but I'll just say if you have someone like Terry Pier who does septic permits and he's been doing them all his life, he works at home, he works fine. But you hire someone new without any experience and they work at home, they kind of flounder. And, you know, those are,
They need.
Yeah.
Terry.
whereas if they were in the same office, and quite frankly, I have fantasized about driving into Chester less often, but I get a lot more done if I'm here. I just do.
Yeah, so I guess to kind of round that out for me, whether turns out to be a threat or an opportunity, or I guess for me, it's either a threat or a weakness. Unless you're a remote worker at one of these big companies that pays high salaries, it's not easy to make enough money to, you know, if you're a young family, it's not easy to make enough money to have this life. And so that's a fact. And if you do have a remote job and then you get swept up in a return to office policy, then you're moving. You're leaving Chester and going closer to where the office is because the office is not here.
Yeah, I'm jotting down a thread, I think an overall, just cost of living in general, cost of building, just high cost overall, and that's sort of an outside influence to Chester.
Well, if we're morphing the threats, I will say that one thing that certainly seems to be out of Chester's control is the high cost of land. It just is, and land and existing housing. I don't think that's anything we can control.
Yeah.
The other thing I put down was taxes, and it's just the town has a little slice of control over their own municipal tax, but state tax, income tax, school tax, they're just what they are. We don't control it. And there are a lot of people saying, well, I don't know if I'm going to say there are people, I've known people that have left Vermont because of taxes. I'm not sure if that's it, but I know there's a lot of people saying that this there's no end in sight, and when is it going to be just too much?
There's a lot of friends that have done it, and
Yeah.
I'm almost at the point where I'm thinking of it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's been my view, some of our legislatures, you know, when you get your budget at home and something else comes up, you figure out how to make it work. You cut something here and there. Unfortunately, up there, they tax something else.
Yeah.
You gotta make more money, so we're gonna tax something else. No, you need to adjust how you're spending the money to make it fit. And that's what's killing us. 'Cause the taxes are driving us right out.
So that feels definitely like a threat
Mhm.
from my point of view.
Certainly.
And I think, you know.
By your
it's-
definition of
I think,
what are we facing that we just don't have any power over?
Yeah.
To me, those are the three things: the high cost of existing housing, the high cost of land, and
Well, I mean, you
the
you
tax.
look at the, the pressures that drive housing cost up, right? And you have demand, and you have, it's a two market system. You have outsiders who have second homes here, who are making considerably more income where they live. And you look at, I mean, how many y- you're on the, what's the percentage of second homes in Ludlow right now? It's like 60, 70%, right?
In the 60.
70,
Yeah.
I thought it was in the
73,
70s too. To
something.
be
Yeah,
honest.
it's 70%, right? I think that's the number I heard. You look at Chester and the demographics we had pre-2020, it was like, what, 15 or 20, and now it's north of 30. You can't, if your median income here is 55, 60K and your starter house is 400K that needs 100K worth of work, you're not getting a house. It's like uh, It's a Wonderful Life with Bailey and Pottersville. Like, you're not going to be able to
Totally.
afford to move into a place here. And so and I've harped on this a little bit. I understand that I'm privileged, the fact that I get to work somewhere else, but buy and live here. But you're not going to have young families that can afford to live, grow up, and stay here if the housing doesn't have some sort of restrictions or some sort of barriers for people buying it as a second home. And you can go about it in two ways. You put in deed restrictions, which I'm not sure what the appetite for telling people who they can sell their house to is. I'm sure it's not very high. Or you put in, you raise the taxes for everyone and raise the homestead exemption for people who live here. And there's an algebraic equation that makes it cheaper for those that live here and makes it a little bit more punitive for those that don't. Again, there's probably not an appetite for that, but there are levers you could potentially pull.
So would you that might be maybe it's a threat. I mean, I'm going to pull on that thread a little bit, Carl. So what people will say to that is, listen, Vermont's got a long, long history of second home ownership. It's not something new. It's been around for hundreds of years. So, has it just been on some sort of a really slow, harmful trajectory all these years? Or maybe it's not really a problem, or something's changed recently that's made it a big problem. So if you were to say it's a threat that Chester has such a high percentage of second homeowners, is that what you're suggesting?
So if we take a step back and we look at a KPI being aging population in Chester, right? And then we ask, well, why is it aging? If we do the 5 whys on something, I think overall the community could be like, well, maybe we should have as many people under 18 that are over 65 in order to have a healthy community. And you ask, well, why is that? Well, there's no places for people to live. And then you ask, well, why is that? Oh, because they can't afford housing, or there's not enough good jobs for them to afford housing. And you
Right.
isolate, like, what is one of the root causes is affordability. And then what drives affordability? Supply and demand. If somebody can pay more, that's going to move the prices up. If the people who live here can't make as much, that's going to keep them locked out. And you look at other cities like Ludlow, like these other places that they have even, there's probably some sort of metrics around, like, once it passes a certain point, it's detrimental to the community because you can no longer just be a community that's 90% second homeowners and no one's actually living here that could actually afford to live here. So it's probably not a one size fits all, but I'm pretty sure there's probably got to be metrics out there that indicate when is a community healthy and when is it no longer healthy. Like our cells dividing isn't inherently a bad thing, but whenever they start rapidly dividing at a certain point, we call it cancer.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to, I agree with everything you're saying. I'm just trying to figure out, you know,
Well,
if,
and if, root causes behind it, I mean, you can look at, the widening gap of wealth disparity. That's shifted considerably over the past 40 or 50 years. You look at what a middle income, my dad never made more than 40,000 a year. My mom was a stay-at-home mom and, we had a house and, two cars and took a vacation every year. Like that doesn't exist today. I think the world's changed quite a bit.
so I mean, you could definitely, I mean, because a threat is an external factor, right?
Right.
So you could, and it's pretty easy to put the wealth inequity gap as a threat.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
affordability.
And I was going to say the way I slice this apple is that I know people that say that housing costs in Vermont is a bubble. It's got to break. It's got to break. It's got to go down. And I've said, if 0.5% of the people that live in New York City or in California decide they want a house in Vermont, our market goes crazy.
Mm-hmm.
There was a house, I was talking to the town clerk in Pomfret, and she said there was a house that was sold to someone that left California. They'd valued it for 1 million. People bought it for 3 million. The listers go and visit them and say, "Why did you pay that?" And they said, "Because coming from California, that was cheap."
Oh,
I mean, that was their answer.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
why not?
so I guess
Well-
I just want to poke at that a little bit because
Yeah.
for me, affordability, not what you were
Yeah,
saying, but
right.
for me, affordability is a little different than the fact that, the tiniest percentage of people in America hold the 90% of the money, right? So there's that widening gap. There, like 50 or 100 years ago, it wouldn't look like 2% of the population has 98% of the wealth. It would look a little different. So is that wealth inequity gap that continues to widen, is that a threat? And can we bundle it into affordability? Maybe. I don't think it's exactly the same.
I think
And-
affordability, sorry, more goes with what we were talking about earlier on sort of the cost of living, the
Yeah.
taxes. So still threat, but not really that widening gap.
Yeah.
Again, this isn't really a threat. I'll just say it. I don't like the idea of people having to live in subsidized housing. I don't think any of us do, but I don't see another answer. The market is just can't
Right.
provide housing that people can afford.
Mhm.
Anyway.
Unless you make the market less attractive.
Okay.
Right. And so
That could be quite a gulp, but I agree. Yeah.
If we, kind of going back to let's not take any ideas off the table because it's
Right.
limiting. It's
Right.
no, I'm good. I'm good with this, Carl. I'm happy to have this dialogue. So yeah. So if the market becomes less attractive, that one of the ways to make that happen is if you if you had some kind of restrictions or covenants that somehow controlled second home ownership or short-term rentals or like whatever it is that people
You-
with a lot of money can do, then that might make things better.
you could go about. So whenever I lived in Austin, before they built Arlston Bergstrom International Airport, they used to have an airport right in the city. It had, I think, 5 or 6 thousand acres. It was called Robert Mueller. And when they decided to build an international airport, they had all this land capacity that just opened up. And Austin was very intentional. They said, okay, we're going to build this, but the developers have to have these covenants. It's going to have deed restrictions. So, we can have a certain amount of really, nice houses for high income people, but there's going to be houses that our police officers and our teachers and our nurses can afford to live in. So deed restrictions is one of them. The other one is if there was ever an appetite for it. And I know these conversations are bigger than me, but really just raise the property tax and the homestead exemption so that those who live here pay about the same in taxes or maybe a little bit less, and you tighter it up and make it a little uncomfortable for those that are thinking about buying a house here. And if they do, then they're paying for that privilege of having a second home in Chester. And if it drives a few buyers away and opens it up for other people who want to live here to actually move here, that happens too. Because
But
we
so
have,
that's
it's a
basically
two
about,
market problem.
yeah, so I get that. I get what you're saying, and I guess you could argue that the state is already moving in that direction with some of the proposed legislation to figure out how to categorize houses a certain way so they can change the tax rate on people that don't live here full time. So there is work.
But it probably should be left up to I mean, I think that this is something that you would want to go city by city in, right? Because not every city has 30 or 70% second homes. For some cities, it should be up to the city to decide what levers are appropriate for us to use to pull out the qualities in the city we want to events. And if it's,
Well, that's true. There are about 650,000 people in Vermont. That's about the same size as the city of Boston. And 2/3 of our tax money is collected and dispersed at the state level. So the decision to pay for schools at the state level kind of really shifts a lot of stuff. Changes a lot.
Mhm.
And it's taken like 20 years for these changes.
Well,
to
it's
hit.
the law of unintended
Yeah.
consequences. I mean, Act 60 and
Right.
was certainly passed for a good reason,
Mhm.
but it made the state in charge of schools. Yeah.
Right. And some absolutely logical fallout, like if you really want to be fair and
Yeah.
value every parcel across the state in a reasonable way, in the same manner, then maybe you want to have the same software that does the valuations, and maybe you want to train people to do that very well. And the idea of elected officials in every town figuring out their valuations is going to leave. It's not going to be worth it anymore.
So Carl, I don't know if you followed the pied-à-terre tax in New York, but Kathy would appreciate his French, foot on the ground. But it's basically rich people that own second homes. They're proposing it would get very high taxes, and it would be to try to discourage them.
So Carl, what I would like you to think about is we've had this discussion about different solutions that might create, a little more pressure on people that don't live in the community. How would you character? I want you to not think about the solution. I want you to characterize it as a weakness or a threat. What's the weakness? What's the threat? Carl?
Yeah, I'm trying to think how we would. So, no, I'm trying to think how I'd frame this. So, I mean, the weakness is the lack that we have. The weakness is the fact that we have a problem that is seemingly outside of our control, right? Like we recognize that there's a steamroller coming down, and let's talk about if New York does pass that foot on the ground tax. If New York suddenly has a market that is now undesirable for them to own a second home, well, what state's right next to New York, right? So essentially, we would even see more demand for second homes in Vermont, which is just going to make our housing affordability and availability worse for people who actually want to live here, right? So it's like the weakness is we have a problem that we don't actually have any viable solutions for, and the
Well,
threat is New York's doing pied terre.
But what's the weakness? Is the weakness the easy availability of second homes? Is the weak, like, you have to be able to name it the solution for it. So,
I would say it's a two market problem of second homes here.
okay.
I mean,
But
it's
if the pied-à-terre in New York is about city living, then they raise the tax, but people aren't gonna come to Vermont because they wanna go to play on Broadway and not have to stay in a hotel. That's not gonna, but that won't.
oh, I thought it was like for second homeowners, so that's only in the New York City then, not like
I-
upstate New York or anything.
No, I'm not saying it's only, but it could be concentrated in places like that. Pied-à-terre generally is referring to a small apartment you've got in the city.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
I believe it's being, because the governor is proposing it, I suspect it will apply to more than just New York City, but a lot of the attention is these very expensive penthouses in New York City.
Hmm.
And it is true what Kathy has said is that French expression is often a name for those, and that's why they've come up with it. Pied-à-terre. I said the D, and I always have to remember letters are swallowed in French.
So I have a robust and active second home market as a weakness. Like there is an appetite, there's a drive, there's available.
Let's throw it out there and see what happens, yeah.
Okay. Mhm. How about a little, how we, a little time, more time on the opportunities, maybe a little
Yeah.
more pick me up on, okay,
Yeah,
what are
let's-
some
let's
of
look at
those?
opportunities for a little bit, and if other weaknesses creep in or threats,
Sure.
we can shout them out, but
Sure.
yeah, getting kind of depressing.
Right.
I was wondering whether Chester could consider, excuse me, things like tax breaks for certain types of industry. Like if, I don't know how much, I should have looked at the valuation on the map house. But if it's sitting there empty and falling apart, the next revaluation is gonna downgrade it. Can the town afford to like give a break?
I think I can give you the answer, which is that, as you know, right now in the property tax, something like 2/3 to 3/4 are school tax and the 1/4 is municipal.
Mhm.
The town can certainly waive the municipal part. If they want to reduce the school part, they have to pay it to the state. State wants its money. And it can be done, but it's something the voters don't find too popular. But I would say I don't know how much in Vermont, but in some parts of the country, communities very actively will offer these corporate welfare packages to say, bring your business here and boy, we'll waive your taxes for 5 years. We'll give you
Mhm.
extra economic development funds at 0% interest. And that's not a game that Vermont towns have played, partly because it's not our ethic and partly because we can't afford it, but could be done. I mean, Chester does have an economic development fund, and we know like Mediterranean used it, and what's that deli out of town? Used to be.
Alder Bakery?
Yeah, right.
Alder.
Yeah. And so, I mean, Chester does have little things like that they can do to help people get started with their equipment costs or their overhead costs. I know in the Mediterranean case, just because the owner told me, it was the state, they were putting in a commercial range and the exhaust system and fire suppression, what the state wanted was thousands and thousands of dollars. And so that's what they used that fund for. Which is, again, that's something out of our control, what Division of Fire Safety says.
Just kind of going back to opportunities, the fact that Vermont does have so many grants and access to funds that are outside of even the city, I feel like that's a neat opportunity that would be good if it was advertised more. Similar to the tax credit thing that Julie had sent out about last month.
Well, when we talk about opportunities, I think I'm sure this is on your list, but we've just said that if we sold ourselves more, if we said what we have, um, and it's the same with, I think, what Carl was saying is if we say, if you bring a business here are the various, sources of grant money that could help you out. But it takes time and people to
Yeah.
have
I
that
see
kind of outreach
being
and to
part
put it
of a
together.
marketing economic development role.
Yeah.
Right, selling that,
Yeah.
compiling it all, because there are.
It's a
so
little
many
hard to
grants.
imagine. I mean, Chester's already made some investments in planning it wasn't that long ago that we had somebody who worked a day a week to do zoning, and now we've got zoning and planning and 2 staff members. But so to bring in an economic development and marketing person is tough swallow, but it's still that I could argue that it could pay off. I don't know.
One of the, things we're trying to measure in our EDC was, what are good KPIs to, track, and, you know, sales revenue or, sales taxes from Chester is one of the things that we've spun up. And, it feels like if we can get a good bead on, what is our pulse today? Um, what are our vital signs looking like? And then hanging off, we're going to be doing a lot of VOC work. We're actually meeting this Wednesday to finalize, surveys that we'll hopefully begin releasing, and then, soliciting input from, community members to figure out like what's on their mind. And then based kind of on that consensus, trying to drive projects that will address some of their concerns. But I've always been a big fan of like if you can get all of your local businesses humming at, kind of their top of licensure, then that's going to drive more businesses wanting to look at Chester. If people drove down the road and they saw everything open, 6 days a week with the parking lots filled, that might encourage them to say, hey, there's an empty building down here. Can I go buy it?
Yeah, I will just say again, Carl, that I'm very hopeful that the Economic Development Commission, which you are on, is going to get us, if nothing else, through the business surveys, some information and get it pretty soon, within 6 months probably. And that might change the nature of our conversation a little bit.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'm thinking about, because I'm looking at the slide on the screen right now, and Ally, maybe you'll end up taking whatever you're hearing and putting them in the right buckets, but I continue to kind of have to remind myself that a weakness should be viewed as an opportunity that we control. Okay, we, Chester. An opportunity in this sense is something is happening in the world outside of Chester.
Yeah.
That may become beneficial to us. So if you thought about an opportunity that way, what are the things that are happening at the state or world level that we need to recognize and see if, hey, if this really becomes true, we should keep our eyes open because we'll want to take advantage of it for Chester because it's happening, it's kind of up there, but the off the cuff one is, hey, you know what? It's going to be a thing. Climate migration. It's going to get too hot. Carl already mentioned this. It's going to be too hot to live in Texas. That's going to happen. And you don't have to understand why it's happening. You just have to look at the data and understand that the temperatures are rising. And as temperatures rise, people will move north because it's too hot.
You bring up a really, uh, I didn't think of this until you just said this, but so you have my company has a bunch of offices, and some of them are smaller offices, 10 or, less people. And if there is this RTO thing, like maybe approaching some of these larger companies that have knowledge workers and being like, hey, it sucks down there. Why don't you come move here and open up a, essentially, grab this building and turn it into a satellite office and you
Yeah,
can run retreats out of it and you can have a critical mass of 10 people on our gigafiber and we're not really overtaxing or sewage and water because it's not really intensive. And then all of a
thought
sudden
it
you're
was.
bringing in a bunch of little nodes to these big other companies.
Yeah. If you could figure out a way to get corporate America to build some branch offices in rural Vermont, that would really help a lot of things, I believe. Because they could be these offices that are, you know, 30 to 50 people, and if,
Why do people do branch offices? It's not that Vermont offers a lot of people, foot traffic in. It would be if you had a project or something you wanted to run.
yeah, I mean, I think it's unlikely that it'll happen because corporations typically aren't building branch offices because they're thinking about their employees. Okay, they're building branch offices for other reasons that are much more about um, making money or something that's advantageous to, you know, making or selling their product. But,
I think maybe if we thought
but,
about
but
why
It,
somebody would want a branch office. Maybe
because their employees can't work in
Mhm.
a state that's 100 degrees.
Yeah, so
I mean,
like,
that's not a problem today, but if you like,
Yeah.
wind the clock forward 50 years and everybody that lives in Texas says, you either build an office in Vermont or I quit. So,
yeah, I was gonna say, it might be that, I agree with you that people build branch offices just to make money, not to satisfy their employees, but it could be that with this difficulty that we have of retaining talent, that could be part of the mix of retaining talent is that, gee, we got an office in Chester that you could choose as your place of work. I don't know, maybe.
I'm wondering if we have to help them figure out that they could put
Yeah.
a group of 15.
Right, if
That
we-
goes back
if
to
we
your
said-
marketing strategy.
That's right, if we said, we've got
Happy
the broad.
employee, happy, right,
Yeah.
like some kind of,
Yeah.
And I'm
And it
sure
does-
that office space in Chester is cheaper than it is in New York or at Austin.
And to get
or
to Hugh's
Houston.
point, if they were paid an Austin or a New York salary, they could buy a house here.
And even if they adjust it for regional, whatever. And it doesn't have to be, I brought up the climate migration thing just to like
Yeah,
lob something out.
I know.
That doesn't have to be the reason companies would build remote offices, but and maybe it can never really, because I think the trend is, although these things flip-flop, during COVID, corporations were shutting down corporate offices all over the place, selling buildings, like you read about it. All the real estate in the cities was abandoned. And and now people are getting called back to the offices. The office buildings are rehydrating or whatever. I'm not sure it's really making employees any happier. I'm not sure that's really making business that much better. But, because there's some kind of a
Businesses do-
flip flop that people haven't settled in on something that'll actually work. I don't know.
Businesses do go on a pendulum and, there's an idea, this is the best way to do it, and it's over
Right.
here, and then gradually they wind up on the other, it takes 15 or 20 years sometimes, but it does swing back
Yeah.
and forth.
Well, I always think about, NFL drafts, right? Like you don't need 32 teams or 30 teams to think you're a first round pick. You just need one. You've got thousands of businesses out there and, just getting a couple of them would be a nice shot in the arm.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking too, is if you could just get a few out of this huge field to see the benefits, that would be what we would need, yeah. But anyway,
Other opportunities, something happening in the world that Chester can take advantage of. Anybody?
I mean, I keep going back to the fact that Vermont already has really good partnership and infrastructure, like legislation around, solar solar fields and partnering with school districts. Like I see that being an untapped area that could benefit both the schools and Vermont and foster energy independence and in light of the increased data center demands that everyone's projecting to happen over the next 5 years. I'm not saying put data centers in Vermont, but we just know that the cost for every electron sent down the distribution grid is going to go up 30% over the next 5 years.
Okay,
I think you just got to the opportunity, because I had the roof space, solar, schools, all of the dedicated areas sort of as a question mark, is this an opportunity? But that last bit, sort of that cost of electric, that's the opportunity, sort of that outside threat.
right, so let's just, everybody's been reading about it. The big tech companies want to build all these data centers to fuel the AI engine. That's going to drive up the cost of electricity. It's already driving up the cost of electricity. Everybody's trying to figure out how those costs are going to get passed on to consumers, where the corporations are going to pay for them. So it sounds like, Carl, you're saying, for us, an opportunity would be to take advantage of whatever Vermont is doing to make renewable energy easy, and therefore leverage that to reduce our dependence on electricity that's being generated elsewhere, which is going to get more expensive because all these data centers are consuming it.
Right. Yeah.
And we wouldn't be developing energy that we couldn't use. I mean,
Right.
that won't go away if everything changes.
I've been looking at tourism, and tourism keeps changing, but I think that there's still a feeling that Vermont it could be well positioned on tourism. It was, for a while there, we wanted to get a lot of Canadians and Europeans to come. Well, now that's not happening.
Yeah.
For a while, a lot of Americans were going to Europe, and now that's happening less. And so the feeling is that there's still a place for tourism, but it's going to be advertising to our own homegrown market. It's going to be, and particularly as airline fares get high, Vermont lives within a day's drive of a quarter of the nation's population. So I guess I'd say there's still opportunities in tourism. It might,
I think
be
that's huge.
different, but I think there is. And yeah.
To go back to your initial discussion of
Yeah.
do we or do we not have agritourism or agricultural based
Right.
businesses that could be strengthened to become a draw for tourism?
One thing I know, living in Woodstock, which is trying very hard to capture the tourist market, is that used to be that people would come up to look at cows and go antiquing and the pretty leaves. And now families with young kids are up, this is boring. Where's the video games? Where's where's this or where's that? And so you have that danger if you market yourself, if there's not enough to keep the kids busy, they're not happy.
So
Yeah.
let's take the agritourism thing a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you, and I also heard, I spoke to a woman who was looking at the old the property on 103, the Kendall property.
Yeah.
And her idea was, and it sounded like a great idea. It didn't pan out, but it was like, I want to create a place where kids, families with kids can come. And there'll be the typical things that grown-ups like to do, like tourist, shopping opportunities, crafts and things to buy. But on the land, there'll also be some farm animals and some stuff the kids can play with. So you could make that a place that you would go and you could take your kids there and they'd actually have fun instead of just
And they learn some things.
I mean, you can with kids do bouncy houses and arcades and stuff like that. But I got to admit, now I have grandkids now. Kids love animals. They don't get much exposure to farm animals, and they love going somewhere where they get exposure to farm animals.
Yeah, that. And let me just say one more thing, Carl, because it's in the same lane of, it's not the same scale, but one of the things that my grandkids love to do, they love to go to Vans.
Yeah.
They love Vans.
Of course, that's
There's a little
draw.
playground, there's a little place to get a gift. You can go over the canopy and there's like a million things to do. And they don't get tired of going there. So,
Yeah.
you know, whatever
Yeah.
we could do
Yeah.
to create.
Yeah, that's actually a very potentially good area to marry agritourism and just tourism in general. Well, I guess to argue what type of agritourism, yeah. But yes,
Can
kids could, and of course, Carl, you have kids of that age, but yeah.
when we were traveling all over the country, we did this program called Harvest Host, which essentially you would park your travel trailer or RV on a farm and they would give you a tour. And my kids loved it. It was like every time we were there, it was like a field trip. Like my daughter was like, we learned about legacy heritage breeds and it was amazing. But like as I'm thinking about an opportunity specifically for, for Chester, I mean, this is gonna sound gauche, but we don't have a lot of public transit that's available on demand, like the Ubers and the Lyfts
Right.
here. But there are a lot of people who have cars that would qualify to be Uber or Lyft drivers. There's just, again, not a lot of demand. And I'm a huge fan of the railroad, and I'm enamored with the fact that I could go to Bellows Falls and be in New York City in a few hours and have dinner there at night. But that train goes both ways. And like we could have a whole, a wake and bake kind of thing where we've got legalized marijuana here and, people could, be driven around nice and safely and go talk to cows and eat cheese and, like they can have an experience from New York City here and then we get to ship them right back to New York City at the end of the day or the following day. You know what I mean? Like there's that, and I'm just thinking of people like, you have the really athletic folks that you'll occasionally see like 20 bikes out in front of the pie shop and they're stopping to refuel with coffee and kolaches, but like there's probably a lot of other lazy people who would love to just leisurely stroll around with a nice buzz and go home.
Yeah, you might be right about that.
Carl, this may be a little bit of a diversion, but I think it's the same thing that I worked in Killington for a time and I'm a little familiar with Okemo. There is a segment of urban people that they don't want to have a car. They want to be brought in by public transit. They want to be in the village center. When they go drinking, they don't want to have to worry. You get a rental car and it snows and you've been drinking and it could be a real problem and they don't want to worry about that. And you're talking about it more in the summer and it would take a while to sell that idea, but it's not a crazy idea.
Yeah.
I've had worse ideas. Now that's
And I do agree that we could even say that an opportunity is to
Start.
get Uber and Lyft,
Robo ride share.
Yeah, right,
like,
something, 'cause
program or
microtransit-
something.
because there probably are people, like you said, there are people that, there's all kinds of people that want to do a kind of what do they call that, a side hustle.
Yeah.
Well, you think about the fixed income community here,
Yeah.
right? Like people who are over 65 that still have a car, who can still drive and are still active, who they're not, it may help them and it could help the community and keep everyone safe. And
Carl, here's what we can do. We can give everybody in Chester that wants to be an Uber driver a free Tesla Cybertruck. I heard they're giving them away. You can get it for free.
that's gonna eat up all the electricity
It
we're
wouldn't cost them
generating though.
more.
Well, you make it halfway to Ludlow when it dies.
Oh, no.
They're giving them
Everybody's
away. But
stranded.
Jeff, they're giving them away.
Sure they are.
Is that true?
No, I just made that up.
No, the prices have dropped precipitously with the Cybertruck though. They used to be like 150K and I heard they're now like 65, 70, which is
Wow, that's a large.
That's a drop.
Goodness, yes.
This is for batteries.
They are
Well,
weird looking things.
Oh, Carl.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I was in Washington in February. I don't have an Uber account. And I ended up needing to go to the hotel concierge desk and say, can you please call me a taxi? Because I'm from Vermont and cows don't like Uber.
I know.
We don't have any.
Yeah.
Yes.
I found myself stuck in Boston not that long ago, and I hailed a taxi because I just didn't know what else to do. And I got there, but yeah, I did not have an Uber account, and I didn't know how to call one.
And it's all very, you call them and say, I want a ride, so, and no money changes hands, no physical money changes hands, it goes to your account and
Yeah.
it's, I don't know. I wasn't particularly comfortable about, I don't know whether this person's qualified to drive. Um,
And you don't know where they're taking you. They-
Yeah.
You may be only going a mile away, but they'll take you
I did worry with this taxi I took. It felt like we did a long road, but I think it was okay. I think it was just the way the one-way streets were.
Yeah, one thing I noticed is that there's usually some other force in their lives that,
Yeah.
is telling them what to do, and they need to get done with you
Yeah.
so they can do something else.
Yeah.
So they are pushed to be quick.
To get you through.
Yeah, that's an idea.
Are we here? We're about 8.
Oh,
We could be winding down. I don't know.
yeah, I mean,
Sounds like.
we have until 8:30, but it doesn't mean we have to stay that long.
No, I mean, I
I
don't.
don't want to stop a good discussion, but it did feel like we're sort of.
Well, last call from anybody in the room on any kind of strength, weakness, opportunity, or threat. And maybe don't worry about the category because we'll just trust Allison to.
Well, yeah, or
properly-
we
Well,
can, that'll be the next
so-
meeting.
so
we
just-
kinda
I
argue
was-
then with-
I have one last one, kind of a top of mind. It's for senior care, right? Like when you look at her demographics of her population and what the demands are going to be to continue to service her population, having better home health care, senior care kind of
Yeah,
businesses, that could be a big thing here.
And services, like,
Yeah.
it's really hard to find somebody to fix your broken
Yeah.
window or
Yeah.
something.
yeah, so I definitely think that would fit under the opportunity because the fact is, it's an external trend. People are
Yeah.
getting older and they're getting older in Vermont and we live in Vermont. So what are we doing to take advantage of all the old people that are gonna be here?
Yeah, we tend to focus a lot on how can we get more young people? How can we get more young people? But we have old people and we should care
How
for
can
them.
we care for
And they're
them?
part of the economy too. They do spend money.
Yeah,
And so, yeah,
that's a great one. Carl.
yeah. So I think that's part of the mix. And everybody says that, the federal money is, so many seniors don't qualify because they have a lifetime of savings. So it's that missing middle housing for seniors. That's a real problem.
Well, even thinking of business solicitation, like bringing in, kind of concierge home health care professionals that could actually go off and be distributed to the community.
There is an element, you would think because Vermont's have got long winters, that it wouldn't be the place that seniors would come to, but there is an in-migration of seniors to Vermont, so it's people who retire and just want to be here, or it's people who go to Kendall or something like that. So it's not something to be, and of course our baby boomers are aging, so it's not something to be ignoring. Yeah.
I guess in that same, maybe kind of last call kind of thing, does anybody believe there's a threat of just reduced state and federal funding to towns? Maybe I'll put federal.
You put what?
Well,
Threat of reduced federal funding
No,
to
I
towns.
don't.
You don't think
I
that's?
think the problem's been that our federal funds have been squandered and wasted. They've been spent on spend $1 million on a study to see how many warts a toad grows or something. They do a lot of that stuff. And if they just didn't squander it,
No, but are you saying Chester's received federal funds
No.
and squandered it?
no. No.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking in the state in general,
Oh, at the state level.
right? You know, just the, I won't get into some of the stuff, but I see funds going to places that don't necessarily need it and other places where they need it and they can't get it.
Okay, so the reason I brought it up is everybody will remember this, there was that whole, hey, the federal government is not gonna fund SNAP, so how are we gonna feed people that don't have food? Or the federal government is cutting funding. For me, it's just, do we believe that we need to worry about federal funding continuing to funnel into the state or towns of Vermont? And some people might say, no, we don't need to worry about that. Everything's fine. Some people say that is a legitimate threat that we need to, account for.
It is a threat and we have no control over it.
So you believe
It's
it's
an
a threat?
unknown. I mean, I think of like reductions to FEMA, and they're also asking states to have a larger cost share
Right,
when there's natural disasters, and that's gonna trickle down.
right.
And
To
it's
the
been
town.
$25 billion killing people, and that's $25 billion that we can't build houses.
So certainly, say flooding, if there's
Yeah,
mitigation risk.
administrations come and go, but
Mhm.
it still feels like there's just going to be more and more competition for fewer and fewer dollars. It does feel that way.
Right, so I'm trying to figure out how to articulate this in a way that's not, so politically charged.
Right.
For me, there is a certain level of uncertainty, regardless of the administration,
Right.
of federal funding coming into states and towns. I don't think anybody can argue that, when one kind of administration is in charge, we get more money. When another kind of administration is in charge, maybe we get less money. Maybe the more money, less money flip-flops. It doesn't really matter. It's not a consistent,
Mhm.
there's not a consistent strategy of funding from the federal to the state level. If that's always been a threat, then maybe it doesn't matter, but so
I think it's.
I do think what you're hitting on is,
Let Carl answer first. Yeah.
so I was following, we have a kind of a directive where we want to see our dollar weakened to make our manufacturing more competitive. And the rates I've heard was anywhere between like 20 to 40%. And they're going to try to do it in a controlled manner. But in order to do that, that's going to make everything that's being imported in the country more expensive. It's going to make hopefully wages go up at least the same amount as inflation, but you are going to see a squeezing of people who are on fixed income. So while the dollar amount that's hitting people's paychecks may not change or grow, it may not decrease, their actual purchasing power is going to. And those are big things that are going to be happening, over the next few years with us. Well, I'll see if I can pull up the documentation. I'll share it with y'all, and maybe you guys will interpret it entirely differently. But I'm looking at that going, there's going to be a squeeze on people on fixed incomes or government, assistance, because their subsidies aren't going to increase at the same rate as the dollar is going to be devaluing.
So is that the same as inflation, or is that something different?
So you know what happened with Japan back in the late 90s, early 2000s, where essentially they bought back their own they bought back their debt, and essentially it kind of cratered their economy. It's essentially kind of similar to that. I mean, we owe $38 trillion in debt as a government. We are constantly, it's now larger than our gross national product. And so there's these really big things structurally that's making us a less sound investment to go park your dollar in as a reserve currency. And so the
Okay.
idea is if we can unpeg ourselves as a reserve currency, we'll become more competitive as a manufacturing is like as a producer of goods, but that means being a net consumer of goods coming in from outside, things are going to get more expensive, or $500 80-inch TV isn't going to be a thing in the future.
Okay,
Yeah, and I think that's what I was sort of, I mean, I didn't want to get into economics, but yeah, the amount of the debt and some other things, it just makes me feel that there'll be administrations will come and go. There may be another ARPA someday, who knows? But I just, generally speaking, I think that I'm not optimistic that future times are going to be well funded. I'm just not.
okay. So, yeah, that was my last round.
Yeah. And then as far as the state goes, we're such a small state. I mean, there's a limit to how much we can tax things.
Right.
And the legislature is just kind of realizing that they just,
I hope so.
Yeah, something's gonna have to give.
one of the things they do is just put more unfunded mandates on towns, but yeah.
Yeah, they have a tendency to do that in my tenure.
Yes.
All working in law enforcement and emergency services and stuff. They make a law or they send down these mandates, but they don't tell you how to manage them or where you're gonna get the money. So you're stuck with the mandates, but.
I mean, you're left with, I mean, just look at how the staff in the town offices has grown. I mean, that's where the services are being provided. You look at what the town of Chester was 10 or 20 years ago, and it's just very different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else on this before I close it out? Last call.
I think it's enough for tonight.
Okay.
There's a lot of work for,
Okay.
yeah, and they're
Yeah.
always, if you think of things really pressing to mind, we can
Yeah,
add to this
we can
list.
add,
We're
yeah.
not set in
Yeah.
stone in any
Yeah, that's
way.
what's great about it.
That's, yeah, it can
Okay.
always be evolving.
Perfect.
Yeah. And that's
Okay.
certainly this meeting on June 9th is, we're going to talk about changing and
More
adding. So,
feedback
I mean,
down.
Yeah.
So I think, Ally, just do the best you can summarizing it,
try.
and we'll just keep
Yeah.
rolling.
Yeah, I think I'll keep a raw list sort of so that we always
Yeah.
have something to hone back into, and then we'll do some massaging
Perfect.
and show you what that looks like.
Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second,
Motion made by Jeff, seconded by Kathy, all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, we're done. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
so good luck to you.
Thank you.